Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Erica Swift. I'm going to be your host for the BioStrategy Partners Practical Knowledge Series. So BioStrategy Partners is a nonprofit consortium of academic research institutions, and we strive to accelerate early-stage innovation to the marketplace by creating industry collaborations through our Germinator program. In addition, we strive to support our entrepreneurial ecosystem by managing the BioLaunch Keystone Innovation Zone and providing educational programs through our Practical Knowledge series. I do want to take a moment to thank our sponsors, MVM Associates, CBRE, Stradley Ronan Law Firm, Silverstein Properties, Cantor Fitzgerald, and University Place Associates. We really appreciate their support that enables us to deliver the Practical Knowledge series. A few housekeeping items. We do ask the audience to please remain on mute and to submit your questions via the chat. So at this time, I just want to introduce Erin, Starosta. So Erin is the Vice President of Commercialization and New Ventures at the Science Center in Philadelphia. Prior to joining the Science Center, Erin built and ran several healthcare accelerators on 4 continents and has been involved in both healthcare-related and venture capital-related endeavors since 1992. His professional experience is deep and rich, spanning from researcher to national speaker to due diligent expert with decades of experience in the life science new ventures. We're very excited to have Erin lead our panel discussion today. And at this time, I will turn the mic over to you, Erin.
Great, thank you so much. Appreciate it, Erica. So yeah, I haven't heard my bio in a while, at least read by somebody else. So the long and short of it is that I like early stage companies, and this is what I do. But I'm going to thank you for that nice intro. I'm going to introduce the other panelists right now, starting with Troy Wilford. Troy, you want to say a couple words about yourself?
Certainly. Troy Wilford, Director of Commercialization Solutions here at the Science Center. Industry experience in med device and med tech. As Erin said, love the startups, love the early stage companies. Commercialization is a passion of mine, and I'm really looking forward to this panel discussion and the discussions that lead from it.
All right, thank you. Glenn?
Sure. I'm Glenn Gabby. I wear 2 hats most days, 3 some days, 4 even other days. I'm currently managing member at Robin Hood Ventures, which is the longest standing angel investing group in the Delaware Valley. We've been around over 20 years. We've got a portfolio of over 90 companies at this point. I am also the managing director of the University Launch Fund from out of Horn Entrepreneurship at the University of Delaware, where we are looking at putting in place an evergreen fund that will support startups coming out of the university, both in terms of supporting student-led startups as well as faculty-led startups.
Thank you, Glenn. Jesse?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Jesse Garcia. I'm the CEO and founder of Tezuda, where we manufacture impact indicators for head injury awareness, as well as helmet damage indication. What's unique about our patented technology is that it works without electronics. And I was really excited to be a part of this panel because when I joined, I was part of the University Science Center's Launch Lane Accelerator program. And when I started, I didn't have a product in market, and now we have our over 7,000 people using our device and expanding into different countries. So happy to talk about product development and what it's like to be a startup company in this space.
Thank you. So the purpose of this panel is just to sort of have an open conversation about early stage startups and things like that. The reason that I, with the number of people who are here and the faces that I recognize, a lot of the people in this room right now are actually pretty battle-hardened, battle-scarred early stage people themselves. And so this is a really interesting group to have here. So I know there'll be time for questions at the end, but I'm actually going to maybe, if nobody objects hard, shorten a little bit of the panel part of the discussion and open it up to more discussion with people in the room too, because I think that there's an opportunity for a roundtable here that is rarely seen by just the fact that we have the right number of people to have a real discussion, but not too many people to let it get out of hand. But I'm going to start with you, Jesse, just to open things up. You know, Jesse is a very impressive startup. She's working on a product that measures head trauma, and you know, I've watched her progress for a lot of this. But one of the things I wanted to start by asking Jesse is, you know, I'm sure there was a day that you started running your company, right? You can remember the day that you made the decision to start running your company instead of doing something else. So looking back at that moment, and then a later moment in time when you realized you were a company, what changed? What was the
Mm.
difference between when you started and when you became a company? Sort of in, you know, now that you're doing well, you can look back and maybe mark that moment.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Aaron. The moment, so I really think of it as three moments. So first there was the realization of the idea, which came from personal use of my coach not recognizing my head injury, let me keep playing in the game, suffered post-concussive symptoms myself, and in that frustration of that injury, sought to buy something on the market that I would have been able to afford, and that product didn't exist. There was only a $300 mouth guard. So I was like, wait, this, you know, there has to be an easier, more affordable way to do this. So that was the spark of the idea. The day I actually decided to pursue the business was I was working full time in food brokerage as an account manager. And this idea had lingered in my head for years. And I had frustrations with my manager, frankly. And I'm like, if this guy could run a business, I could run a business. So it was just, I had to overcome the belief that I was the right person to do it. And then when I became a real company was when, I would say it was when we launched our Kickstarter campaign. We had done a lot of the preliminary R&D, and this was the first time we were testing the market to see if people would actually purchase our device. And it was a successful Kickstarter campaign. That's how we launched. And that's when I was like, all right, Tezuda's real. This is, people want it. We have customers to serve, and we're going after it.
So looking back, what were the maybe 1, 2, 3, 5 things, preferably shorter list of things you would look back on and say, these are things that you need to do in order to be a company, to make that transition from a good idea to something, you know, Kickstarter's one, like you mentioned, you know, fundraising. What else? Anything else?
I did extensive patent research to making sure that this was something that was protectable. I went in depth with customer discovery interviews, hundreds of discovery interviews with parents, coaches, different organizations. Obviously, the official, you know, getting set up as an LLC, getting my EIN numbers, things like that. And then finding a team to support me were really the biggest steps to take outside of product development.
All right. So we'll come back to team in a moment. But so what I think I heard you say was IP, fundraising, and customer discovery, and team building, if you were to put these in like major headings, right?
Yes.
So Glenn, the same question to you, because now from an investment standpoint, which we're gonna use you a lot today as a voice of investor, though I know you're deeper than that. But when you look at companies, because I'm sure you see companies at all stages, or they show up at your house at all stages looking for, you know, for help and money, what's the big difference for you? What are the characteristics you're looking for that say to you that the company, you know, this is a company? So, you know, Jesse's stated when she looks back and thinks that she was a company, but when do you, you know, what are your criteria for looking at that?
Well, I'll put Jesse a little bit on point on this because she came to us looking for investment early on. And so, you know, and a lot of this is the feedback we gave her at that point. Number one, the biggest challenge that we have is not ready for investment on one of 3 criteria. Number one is you don't have the team. And by not having the team means you can't execute. You can show us a great plan, but if you don't have the resources to execute, and that starts with human capital, okay? The second thing is, and look, every startup, that's a challenge, right? Do you hire? Do you have a co-founder? perfect startups have all very well-heeled co-founders that don't need to take salaries. So as a result, their financial projections look great and the investors fall all over themselves. Well, that's not the reality of the situation. The reality of the situation is you got to have the right people that can execute on whatever that plan is. And
is there
maybe
a core
those
group of right people? Like, are you looking for 3 people?
and the core group is 1, 2, 3, 5. Are they employees? Are they co-founders? Are they advisors? They just have to be committed. That's the key. They've got to be committed to the success, and they have to be rewarded for success. And there's some other aspects of that. So, team. Number 2 is, and this is where different investors look at it differently. I don't look at the market as 1 or 2. I actually look at it as 3. The second thing is the product. Show me something that's differentiated. Show me something that I look at and go, wow, why didn't I think of that?
So team, product, and market. Those would be your 3 things, your 3 big ones.
And then the third is give me a market that's big enough that my investment has a chance to grow to give me a return. There are lots of people with really cool niche things, but it's hard as an investor to get a return if the market's not big enough to allow for growth and an exit and a liquidity event. So those are the 3, but it all starts with team.
All right. So Jesse, where did you find your team?
So I found my team in a couple different places. So I went to Lehigh University. I got a master's in engineering and technical entrepreneurship there, and I met our CTO, Chris, who was getting his master's in mechanical engineering while we were on campus. And the relationship started with some subcontracted work, just feeling each other out in terms of what was possible. But he was definitely the first person to join our team. And then as we started, and this was really just in the ideation phase of like, is this technology even feasible to develop? And then we added on, I like the idea of, I don't want to say try before you buy, but like that was just the history before how we put our team together. So Cameron Dye, who's our VP of engineering, came on doing subcontracted work as well. Eventually he came on full time. Jill Harris, who's our VP of operations, she came on as a Drexel co-op doing her master's in biomedical engineering. So we basically were able to see if there was a fit for the company and then expand further. And then our most recent hire, Chris Tidy, he's actually out of the UK. He has over 20 years experience in the helmet and safety industry. That was a long recruiting effort in terms of, I established that relationship a year ago. He finally came on full time in January. So for us, I'm actively recruiting constantly. I think magical teams create magical products. So I'm doubling my recruiting efforts, but have been working with our team, for several years now, but found them through maker spaces and then obviously opportunities like Drexel Co-op. And Chris came through a previous business connection.
So when you got rid of members of your team, what were the characteristics? What are red flags that you can tell people here to look for when building a team?
So I think Glenn really put it lightly. It's really the commitment. Like startups are not. There's a lot of glorification of startups, but it's a lot of long nights, a lot of hard hours, and you have to have people who are motivated. Like I make sure that all my team members are equity holders in the company and have options to make sure that this is worthwhile for them to pursue and go above the extra mile. But when I have let people go, it's because it's not a good fit for it's not that they didn't have interest in the company and they were very skilled people, but it's more the fit about the company culture and the size of business. Because there's a lot of, we try to be strategic and have plans and obviously do that, but it's very fast moving in a startup with pivoting and, you know, putting out fires sometimes on the day to day. So we're trying to minimize that as we grow and scale. But that was really the biggest culture fit, was just a mismatch of expectations in terms of what to expect in a early stage startup setting.
Got it. So Troy, go to you. I know you're good at finding resources or supporting startups and these sorts of things. What are recommendations you would have, or what are things you would like to comment on in terms of finding or supporting, finding, building, and supporting teams?
I can speak to my experience specifically. I think that especially now in formats like this, it's a matter of showing up as many different opportunities as possible, given how frequent events like this and sessions like this are occurring. The Science Center obviously has a tremendous amount of reach into the network, making those connections that are going to be meaningful. And I think that there's a richness of our community that exists, and it's just a matter of being at the right place so that you can make that introduction and have that connectivity. And kind of to Jesse's point, right? So there was one relationship that took a year to take place, right? And so that's usually what happens is having the patience and the awareness and being in that right place to make those connections, and then you're going to find success that way.
Thanks. So Glenn, you made a comment before, so I'm going to jump around a little bit, but sort of the before and after. So you mentioned that Jesse came looking for money from you at one point. Do you remember that interaction?
Do I? Yes.
Can you tell me at the time what she was lacking, and tell me now, or what you were looking for that you maybe didn't see at that time, and then we'll jump to today.
Yeah, one of the things, and Jesse addressed this, is that we had some concerns about, did she have the right key people on the team? Had that all come together, or did it need to come together? And, with some companies, we'll go, okay, we'll help you, right? Here, meet our member who happens to be perfect because they know your industry, and maybe they come on in as an advisor, and that gets us comfortable. So there are different ways to solve that, but there were some issues around that. There were also some issues around where the Tezuda product would fit in the marketplace, because there were at that point a number of people with electronic solutions, whereas hers is a fluid mechanical solution. There are others that were, and we struggled with, well, somebody's going to win, who wins and how. And as a result, we sort of said, Jesse, we love what you're doing, but we don't know which direction the industry is going in. We're not smart enough to know that. This is not a right investment for us, right? We needed to be smarter about where she was going to be able to see the future clearly and how Tezuda would fit into that. And sometimes that's what, as early stage investors, sometimes we just have to go, whoa, we don't know. And as a result, we aren't a good investor here. And that's where we ended up.
Sure. So Jesse, do you remember your interactions with Glenn?
Definitely.
This is rare that I get a panel where I get both people on the thing, so I'm just going to ask both sides of the question. What was your remembering of going for money at that time, and how you felt about it then, and maybe how you're looking at it now?
Yeah, I look at it. I remember that interaction very clearly, and it's something that I had no bad feelings about afterwards, because I think I took the feedback very literally and realized that it was definitely a team issue. At the time, we were all engineers and we were still missing that key business development person. And the other one was in terms of just like the market, and exactly what Glenn was saying, like, how does this fit into the market? How do we win the market with our segmentation? And I just look at our progress these past couple of months, and we introduced a new product, which is for helmet damage indication, which is really what's resonating further with helmet manufacturers and our scale. So I think when I presented to Robinhood, I looked at my projections. I was looking back on my decks, and I realized I put my projections as if I was going to service like one helmet manufacturer, and that's how we were going to get growth. And with our most recent like updates and just how we're pursuing the market, it's like we're probably going to capture 5 helmet manufacturers in the near future. So it's just what I presented was like so small, and any investor would have been like, this isn't a big enough return for me. But now just thinking about it differently, telling the story differently, having more customer discovery with helmet manufacturers in particular, where we see high growth, has led to this new product as well as further expansion. So it's a much different conversation, and I'm actively raising capital right now. So I know it's resonating a lot better than before.
So then here's the $1 million question, which is, are you going back to Glenn now to talk to him now that you're going back for money? And if not, why not? And so this is probably useful for all the investors here who are on this call, and I know there are a couple, to understand what makes you not go back to somebody now that he's probably in a position where he's probably a lot more interested to see you, right? You've met a lot of the things that he stated are criteria that he would invest in.
Yeah, I think there's that. There's part of me that is like, oh, like looking back at that deck, I don't want to say embarrassed, but like I'm just like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe I presented that to investors back then. Like there's like just reflecting. But yeah, no, Robinhood has always been I would love to present to Robinhood or any other investor in the crowd. Like I know we have I'm in active discussions with a couple different groups right now, so adding more to the pipeline is always great. And I've always looked at it as viable partners. And I think, my product, my company in particular, is a very unique approach. So it just takes very open-minded people and people who understand manufacturing to really get it. And yeah, that's how I looked at it. And so definitely.
So let me ask the question a slightly different way then, without putting Glenn on the spot or anybody else on the spot. What are the things that you are looking for now in an investor that you might not have known to look at then? Let me ask it that way. And Glenn, the same question to you. It's going to come back to you, so just prepping you, but go ahead, Jesse.
Yeah, I think the big one for us is we're navigating. So a lot of, we just opened up 2 new distributors, one in the UK, one in Australia. And the reason why they're getting customers for us is because of insurance plays. So I realized that, early on, startups are just like, how do I get money in the door to like build my prototype or, do beta testing? And now it's like, outside of capital, like I have a lot of optionality for capital, whether it's traditional financing, reaching out to investors. It's like I'm more looking for advice, like who's going to help me scale my production when I have to look outside the US? Like who's going to make introductions to key insurance providers for my workers' comp claims that I'm making on our product? Like, so it's less about the money now, and it's more about who and whom can help the business in ways that like I don't know yet, with network and power of network, if that makes sense.
Sure. So Glenn, you want to respond?
It makes perfect sense, because to me, that's the right answer. I never want to be dumb money in a deal.
Yeah.
Most investors don't. And most entrepreneurs should never take dumb money if they can.
Let me pause you there. Just so for the people who don't know the difference between dumb and smart money, it's not that the investor or the company is dumb. It's that the investor has no specific knowledge of the space in which they're investing. They're investing because it seems like a good idea, but they don't have technical knowledge to really know that that's the case. A smart investor is somebody who's, somebody who works for a sports investment group investing in sports related equipment would be a smart investor. So keep going, Glenn.
Yeah, and it is a problem as an angel investor, is that oftentimes we see companies that are a challenge to understand on a technological basis because we're a generalist group. And that's where we have to look very hard at ourselves to go, look, we don't have that expertise, but we'd like to do deals in that space. So we are then left with, how do we do that? And we do it by recruiting members with expertise that then share our mission of funding early stage, benefiting from portfolio theory, and also supporting our portfolio companies. And Jesse's in a space where we've gained expertise over time on the consumer product side, which we may not have had when we had the first exposure to Tezuda. So maybe we're a better investor now, and she's leading a better company now. I'd love to take another look, but this is one of the good things, and I'm hoping Jesse is at this point. If Jesse has been successful enough that she now doesn't need our money, and she can actually get cheaper and smarter money from other places, we often lose deals as a result of that.
Sure, that's common, very, very common.
And I don't mind that, Aaron. That's not a bad thing. Mm-hmm. That means companies are being successful, and it's for us as investors to look and go, okay, what made them successful? Why did we choose? And did we make the right decision at that moment in time, or did we miss something? In which case, next time, let's not miss it.
So a couple of things you said here that I think need to be readdressed, and I want to come back to Mitchell's comment in a minute, which was somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but actually fair, which is, everybody, as you go through the process of building your company, no matter who you are, you're going to build a Rolodex. And one of the things that's really key and important here is that you're able to go back to your Rolodex over time and come back. Glenn talked about the fact they've got more expertise in this. They're growing. They're always changing. They're always looking to stay current. People that you went to a while ago who might not have been appropriate might be willing to sit down and talk to you again. And even if they're not the people, they're going to appreciate that you came back. And that means that if they appreciate you, they're also probably going to do a little bit more effort to maybe help you find that missing person on your team or introduce you to somebody that they met, whatever. So never burn a bridge, never burn an opportunity, because all these people that you meet along the way, and this is a great example, Glenn and Jesse are on a panel together talking about, their interactions over time, which I think for me is fascinating. Hopefully other people find so too. But it's really important to know that you can go back to your Rolodex at any time and just check in, touch base, see what's still out there, because the world's always changing and you never know what's going to, shake free for that tree. And Mitchell, I'm going to say that my mother would probably say that she knows everything there is to know about me. So if you told her that she was making a dumb investment giving me money, she would probably take offense to that. But you're not probably inherently wrong, which is friends and family oftentimes are investing in the team, which is not much different than an investor, but they oftentimes don't understand the technology. So yes, friends and family are often considered dumb money. Most of the time would be considered dumb money. So Troy, we've not talked to you enough in this process, so I want to come back to you. So in a change of direction slightly, one of the big things that Jesse's mentioned, Glenn has mentioned, and I believe to be critical is customer discovery. There are a lot of people out there making things that nobody wants, and if they just went and talked to a few people, they'd learn what it is to do that. That's one of the areas that I think you're very strong in and an expert in, Troy. So can you talk a little bit about customer discovery, value, importance, how you do it, what you like to see when you're looking at companies and startups in that space?
No, it's funny. 28 minutes left. You could spend hours. I mean, there are programs. I know Dunbar Bryn is on the call here and leading the ICorps program up at Rutgers. This customer discovery is critical. It's really understanding that there is someone out there who's going to be willing to pay for your product, right? And so how you do it, you start to talk about the problems, talking about the pain points, and in the back of your mind, you've got your concept for how you're going to resolve those problems. I think one of the biggest challenges that most innovators have is keeping the lid on their innovation, right, as they're doing their customer discovery, right? So they talk about, okay, would you buy this, and really start to talk about the technology, whether it's digital or physical, before really identifying where the pain is. And there's this concept of problem solution fit, and then you move into product market fit, but there really is a progression, and it all starts with this customer discovery, and the questions that we encourage our founders and innovators to ask during this customer discovery phase is, starts with, tell me about, right? Having conversations in recent days, encouraging teams to start with, tell me about, and that really encourages the recipient to storytell about their life, right? And so in the case of Tezuda, tell me about the last time that you were concussed, or if you're talking to a more clinical person, that you tell me about the last time you had to field dress someone with a concussion, or dress someone who's got concussive symptoms. Getting them to talk about what is good about what they're doing, what's challenging about what they're doing. Those are the elements of the story that then you can map back to what it is you're doing to ensure that someone out there is going to be resonating with your story.
Glenn and Jesse, anything you want to add or change, argue about?
No, I love that, Troy, and something that I'm incredibly grateful that I did very early on was a lot of pain and customer discovery interviews. And that's something that any entrepreneur without funding or with an idea can do immediately. And I think that's like spend the most time there. And that's like my idea was an electronic mouth guard. And then by doing this, I realized the pain was still not knowing when people were hurt and how to handle those situations just like mine. But it really dictated our design strategy and why we developed an analog solution to this. And the other thing I would add is customer discovery is constant. By doing active customer discovery, like even more recently, like it's something that you should integrate into your business, not just at the start, but throughout it, because you never know where it's going to lead, and it could come up with new ideas for you to pursue based on the market, which is exactly what you want.
To me, customer discovery is the greatest way to overcome one of the biggest flaws I see with startup entrepreneurs, and that's confirmation bias. Virtually anybody that decides to start a company they're starting around their own vision or their team's vision. And by having a vision, you're seeing the world in a very specific way because that's what you're carrying forward. That's what vision is all about. What vision then has is implied confirmation bias. Because that's how you see the world, that's how you're directing the company, and that's how you're developing your product, and that's how you're going to market, and all of those things. Only once the market speaks to you as an entrepreneur do you have the correct data to be able to go, oh, my view of the world might not be as well informed as it should be, as complete as it should be. And then you can start saying, wow, what does the market want and what is my offering, as opposed to, I have this offering, it's superior, as a result, the market shall want it. That's an important transition for every company that's going to be successful to go through. And we still see a lot of companies that have been around for some time that haven't been able to make that transition, and it's unfortunate.
It's also expensive, right? And so if you are going through your funding, developing a product that no one really wants because you haven't done the discovery, and you've got to start over again. That's an expensive loop. And Jessie touched on this, with her process. It's a low cost, high reward exercise just to ask simple questions about surrounding, pain points. You don't need to go and get $500,000 in funding. You don't need to get an SBR. You don't need any. Just start asking intelligent questions to frame and avoid the confirmation bias. But Glenn, to your point, we see companies like this all the time that are so focused on what it is that they've done. They know that it is going to be a market killer. It's going to sell itself is the classic term that we hear a lot. And like I said, that can be an expensive assumption to get wrong.
So with the remaining time we have left, I want to address something that I think people have been noticing but don't know what to do with, and this group might have a little bit of insight into. There's been a massive jump up in spaces for startups, especially lab spaces and maker spaces and so forth in the city of Philadelphia. For those of you who are not from Philadelphia, it's a pretty active thing that's going on right now, just everywhere. And so, Jesse, I'll ask you, can you talk to me about um, your experiences in trying to figure out how to build? You know, yours is not just a bunch of people meeting and talking. You're actually physically building something. How did you decide how to do that?
So just to clarify, how did I decide what space to
Where
use?
where are you doing it? Why did you choose there? Like, what do you recommend? Make it easier. What do you recommend people look for when trying to do something like you're doing in terms of workspace, lab space, and building a company?
Absolutely. So originally I'm from New Jersey, and when I graduated from Lehigh, I was working in New Jersey. This was back in 2013, 2014, and I couldn't find, so for us in particular, like we needed fabrication tools, 3D printing, access to, like I had to start building my prototypes. I had to start testing. And at that time, there were only maker spaces attached to colleges or universities in the area that I didn't have access to as someone who just graduated. Um, and then I started looking into places that would give a non-student access, and I found two organizations. One was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It was tied to Alpha Lab Gear. I forget the name off the top of my head. And then the other was NextFab out of Philadelphia. And I ended up moving to the Philadelphia region just to gain access to a maker space at the time. Now there's a lot more local ones, things like that. But it was really important for me to be able to build myself, mostly because of the cost constraints that outsourcing and tooling coding came back out. And I'm so glad that I did that, because I learned so much about manufacturing and the process. And then now when I'm looking for facilities, like we have an assembly facility in New Jersey that is hitting capacity. It's really clean space that I need, like for putting together our product, as well as space for people, as well as testing. So like I have very loud drop testing, and I need a space to be messy, and then I need a space to be clean. So like office space isn't appropriate for me. Like I need raw floors, like warehousing, high ceilings, um, to do lab grade work on my product for quality assurance, as well as assembly work, which needs
Where
to
did you
be
find that?
clean.
Did you find that?
So right now I'm in the Pennovation Center in Grays Ferry, and I have been doing my R&D out of here, which has been great. We're actually outgrowing our current office, so we have to upgrade that. The assembly space has been very difficult. New Jersey, it's basically an hour and a half away, and we're already outgrowing that area. So right now I'm working with Troy to um, identify something local, that's drivable for us. And it's been tough. It's been tough because there are a ton of lab spaces, but it's like I need clean assembly space, and either I make that myself or I have to keep looking for that.
So anybody in this room that's listening and has ideas about something that they want to start, clean lab space seems to be something. I've heard this come up a bunch of times. Troy, what other resources are available out there? You've got your finger on the pulse of a lot of this. What are startup resources that you recommend out there?
Yeah, no, it's a common question that I field. Again, going back to there's a richness of resources. Some of them are not necessarily as well known, and kind of going to, the collaboration with Jesse. Suggesting CIC, suggesting the Delaware Innovation Space. She mentioned NextFab. I think we as a region have done a good bit of work in developing, lab space, right? But with Jesse and looking at manufacturing space and assembly space and test, we don't necessarily have that same makerspace, resource, development. So yes, I think that will be an opportunity for us to grow and develop that. But I know that more and more of these are coming online. Just in the conversations I'm having with those three entities that I just mentioned, each of them are eager to expand their portfolio and capture more companies. Not just the research-based, basic science, work that's going on. But I think that again, it's reaching out to Glenn at Robinhood and say, okay, this is who we are, this is what we're doing, and this is what we need. Glenn's got a network. We at the Science Center have a network. I think that just making those connections, that first entry into any of these entities that are available, will give you the access that you're looking for, because again, the richness exists. It's just a matter of mapping it for yourself. And this is a project that has been going on with the Science Center, for certainly my tenure.
Excellent. All right. So
can I offer
yeah,
two
sure,
little
please.
bits of
Absolutely.
insight on this topic, because it's very, very fresh with us, because one of the difficulties we get in is being able to support our portfolio companies as they are hopefully growing. And the issues that Jesse documented are being felt all over the place, which is clean versus dirty, wet versus dry, shared versus dedicated. You essentially have to stack all these, and most companies need a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of the other. And in the old days, what you do is have a dedicated facility that you could build out to your own liking. That, and investor hat on, investors screwed that model up. Because what we said to companies is, you've got to be lean. We don't want to see you put a lot of expense into your facilities. Oh my God, you want to build out your own facility? We go running from the door, because we want all of our money going towards growing sales and doing those other things. And now it's come back to bite us. And we're getting bitten, and bitten hard right now, because what we're seeing is it's greatly limiting the growth opportunities of our portfolio companies. And
I'm going to start a business with a clean room, a dirty room, a wet room, and a dry room, and I'm going to take a small piece of equity from every single company that wants to do development there, and I will see you in the billionaires circle.
And that is absolutely awesome, because you will inevitably then find that you've built it where people will not use it.
Yeah, right.
Right?
Yeah.
Because the other aspect of all this is urban versus suburban, green fields versus brown fields. I mean, you've got so many layers on the where do we locate and what do we need discussion that is just going to be a problem.
No, you're not wrong.
Yeah.
You're not wrong. All right. So now, go ahead.
Oh, you just bring up a really, I don't want to throw off the conversation, but Glenn brought up location, and at least as a founder raising capital right now, it's super interesting that so many investors, more than I thought, have ties to location. And even though that there are teams that are growing tremendously remotely, that's just something that I've been picking up. Location matters more than I thought it would to a lot of investors. But that's just an aside. I don't want to throw off the convo too much.
So no. So let's open it up to questions, and we'll start with Mitchell, because I know he's got a couple questions about dumb money here. So Mitchell, you want to just ask the questions or make the comment and open it up to discussion? Are you there?
Okay,
There he is.
Mike only here, and yeah, I was just commenting about dumb money, and just that.
Sure,
if
no,
you,
well, make the comment out loud, because I'd love to hear it.
Going ahead with with accepting money from whoever is offering it, in part that's helpful, but you're also losing out on the essentially the expertise and knowledge of certain investors. So like an SBIR submission, theoretically, you're being screened, by the investor, which in that case is, or the funder, which in that case is, say, NIH or DOE or whoever, and they are offering, they aren't letting you, go charge. They're stopping you from just charging ahead with your project, without your doing it, intelligently. Okay, I'll stop there.
No. So that brings up the question to the group, which is there? I mean, I've heard both sides of this equation. Some investors say, we're so much more than the money that we give you, and some people come back and say, oh no, you're not. Like, just the stuff that they told me was terrible, or the advice they gave me, or the connections they had were not. But is there real advantage to smart money? I think I know the answer. I know how I'd answer the question, but I'll ask it. Is there advantage to smart money?
I'll answer this one. Like, I've personally walked away from two $500,000 investments because of the people that were involved, and that was incredibly difficult to do as someone who is cash strapped and trying to scale things like that. But it really came down to the person who was offering it and the alignment there. And, in those two circumstances, like, I had one investor saying that a big caveat was the product that I developed and me wanting to take a different pursuit. And even though my customer discovery and research was telling me otherwise. And then the other one, frankly, didn't believed in the technology, but didn't believe in me as a leader and wanted to be able to remove me from that position. And I was like, no, like, I am the right person. My team is the right team. Especially at this scale. At different scales, that might be a different conversation when we have hundreds of people working for us. But those were huge red flags to me. Like, especially at an early stage, you're investing, and Glenn could correct me, like, you're investing in the team and the person. So if there's doubts there, like, I don't know. Those were deals that I personally walked away from. And I'm very happy that I did.
Yep. Dunbar, you have a question. Go ahead and ask it.
Yeah, so I kind of typed most of what I had in.
Sure.
First, thanks to Troy for the shout out to ICorps and customer discovery. We are now participating in the Northeast Hub with Princeton and University of Delaware, so a variety of other schools, and passionate believer in customer discovery. But I'm curious, we've had some teams go through our program where they're developing smart apps related in the medical space, and I often have the sense that they're not really able to assess how algorithms and digital platforms really can be entering in, and so I just wonder any kind of comments on that whole space.
Who'd like to answer?
Yeah, I'll offer a little insight from an investor. One of the challenges that we're seeing is in an area that is getting a lot of interest, and I'd even say is frothy at this point with regards to offerings. It becomes exceptionally difficult to see winners versus losers. Everybody sort of is in the space, and you go, well, how do we determine? And that's where that market discovery side and early sales traction really matters, because we've had a couple where we've had to go, that's awesome, we think what you're doing is really going to be, next generation. We unfortunately use 2.0 and 3.0 way more than we should in terms of how we view offerings. But we have gotten to the point where we have to say to some people, you got to get some traction, not just discovery, but real traction, because we're not smart enough, but we'd love to find out a real living, breathing customer and why they made the decision to go with you versus the other 300 offerings that are there. And that becomes a big part of where we've had to take a step back and go, again, much like I had to say to Jesse, we're not smart enough to figure out whether your approach or that other approach. So, you know, come back to us when you are, and if you're beyond us, we understand. That's the same answer I'm having to have to give in that area, Dunbar.
Yeah, and I would, you know, kind of further that point, you know, where we sit, you know, between that founder, that company, and where they may be going, you know, for funding, or where they may be going for commercialization and driving revenue, you know, we see a good number of these companies, and you know, Glenn's point, it's a crowded space, right? And digital health is a very crowded space, and creating that differentiation is not always clear and succinct as you're starting to tell your story. And so, you know, our process is really to coach these teams to the point where they are effectively asking questions so that they can get to that traction, right? But it's also defining traction for these companies in ways that are going to satisfy what the investment community is going to need to see, right? So is it a pilot, unpaid pilot? Is it a paid pilot? Is it an actual, you know, recurring customer? Is it a letter of intent? You know, and so you have a number of levers that you can start to pull to move closer and closer to, you know, what would ultimately get you, you know, any sort of success, which is recurring revenue, right? And so once you have annual recurring revenue, a conversation with Glenn becomes really simple, right? A conversation with Ben Frank becomes really simple, right? But it's taken those very concrete and definitive steps toward that, so that you are creating, you know, that space that you can define and defend, and make sure that you can tell an articulate story about why you are going to be one of the winners, to use Glenn's parlance, as opposed to one of the losers. It's also understanding where these health systems, if it is a health-related platform, how they fit into the broader world of Epic and Cerner, because, you know, they're the 800-pound gorillas out there that could, in a second, do what you do if they had the wherewithal to do it.
Thanks.
Yeah, that also gets to the part of the equation, which is if Epic or Cerner, to riff off of where Troy started, if Epic and Cerner aren't doing it, is the problem not significant enough to care about, in which case you don't have a chance? Or is it just something they haven't recognized yet and they become your instantaneous exit partners? As an investor, I want number two. I want no part of number one.
Yeah, Erin, you're on mute. You're on mute if you're speaking.
I said really important things there, and everybody missed it. But maybe next panel. Thank you, Troy. So just to wrap this up, to finish this off. So yes, I was trying to transition things, and unfortunately nobody heard anything that I said to do so. But let me do this. Jesse, one thing for the people who are listening, what's one take-home lesson? If you had one thing you wanted to tell people in this journey of yours as through building Tezuda, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Don't think about it too hard.
There's no one better than you. I think the hardest step
Thank
is
you.
the first step.
Yep.
Yep.
Glenn,
And
same question?
for help.
I could echo that, but I'll add something a little different. When you're speaking to investors, make sure you can speak in the voice of the market or the customer.
All right, excellent. Troy.
Yeah, two quality comments there. There's not much to add, but I think, you know, as a support system for early stage companies, it's really understanding, where it is that you want to go, and then reaching out to the resources that exist to get you there. And this, I mean, this slide is certainly not exhaustive, but it is a good picture of what it is that you have in front of you. So, any one of these entities could point, could connect you with any other the other entities that exist in the community. So, be open to, networking, and that is going to be, one of your best strengths.
So, and I'll finish with, when you come to an event like this, take down the names of the people who are here, connect with them on LinkedIn, and send a little note to everyone to let them know who you are or what you're working on, because they're here for the same reason you are, and that means that they're like-minded. So when we're talking about dumb money and smart money, everybody here is effectively smart money because they're interested in the topic, and there's an opportunity for you to connect with like-minded people who may be able to help further whatever it is that you're working on. So you go to a lot of these things, you've been in a lot of virtual things. I'm going to bet the vast majority of you are not doing outreach post one of these events, but I recommend, my advice to you is to do that, because that's the best way to grow your Rolodex, grow your LinkedIn profile, and connect with people that really can help you progress things that you're working on. All right. Well, I would like to thank BioStrategy Partners for putting this on and allowing us to pontificate here for a little bit. I'd like to thank all of you who took the time and made the effort to join us today and ask some questions and consider what we had to say. I look forward to getting LinkedIn connections from all of those of you that I don't already have them with. And Erica just came off of stealth mode, so I'm going to let her have the last word here.
Thank you so much, Erin, and thank you, Troy, Jesse, and Glenn. It was an excellent panel. There was so much great bits of knowledge there. So thank you again. It was fantastic.
All right, and thank you all. Take care.